The legacy of noted architect Frank Lloyd Wright includes more than 1,140 distinctive designs. During his lifetime, more than 500 of those designs were built, and today more than 400 still survive. Welcome to Glencoe, Illinois, the location of many of the prairie-style structures Wright created early in his career. Between 1905 and 1916, Wright prepared drawings and/or plans for at least 21 different structures in Glencoe. 14, or possibly 15, were actually built. The 13 structures that survive today make Glencoe the home of the third largest concentration of Frank Lloyd Wright design structures in the world. Wright's work in Glencoe began in 1905 with a home designed for banker William Glasner and his wife Cora at 850 Sheridan Road. The design reportedly came out of a competition for a dwelling that would be comfortable for 2 people without servants. It was a contest that Wright apparently won. In the winter of 1908-1909, Wright designed the Edmund D. Brigham House on a neighboring lot just down the street at 790 Sheridan Road. It remains Wright's first and only prairie house actually constructed in board-formed reinforced concrete. The bulk of Wright's work in Glencoe, however, came at the behest of his lawyer, client, and friend, Sherman Booth. In 1910, Sherman and Elizabeth Booth purchased a 15-acre wooded tract in northern Glencoe. And shortly thereafter, they retained Wright to design a magnificent estate. The Booth Commission offered Wright the opportunity to work with a challenging wooded site augmented by a winding ravine. Wright frequently said that the more interesting the site, the more interesting the design. The ravine became an integral part of his plan for the estate, which is often referred to as Scheme Number 1. The design included a garage and a stable that were built in 1912. In 1913, Wright designed a small cottage for the Booth family pending construction of the estate residence, but plans inexplicably changed after the cottage was built. Sometime in late 1913 or early 1914, Booth and Wright collaborated on converting the property into Ravine Bluffs, a proposed 25-house subdivision. Plans for Ravine Bluffs were approved by the village of Glencoe in August of 1914. We will start our tour today at the southern end of Ravine Bluffs, at the park that is the new home of the Booth Cottage. Across the street from the northeast edge of the park is one of 3 Wright-designed markers that serve as a utilitarian feature marking the boundaries of the development's perimeters. The sculptures are geometric with concrete cubes, rectangles, and spheres assembled at right angles to one another. Each marker originally included integral street lighting. Copper plates identify the location as Ravine Bluffs. Some experts have suggested that the markers were designed by sculptor Alfonso Iannelli, who worked with Wright on several projects. Existing drawings in Wright's hand, with a specific inscription to Sherman Booth, as well as renderings of the markers in Wright's design for a private train station, tend to rebut this speculation. After years of exposure to Chicago's harsh winters, the markers were in very bad shape. Shortly before the Ravine Bluffs Centennial celebration in 2015, the village of Glencoe completed a program to restore the markers to their original condition. We will now move west along Meadow Road to approach several of the Wright-designed homes. Of the planned 25 homes, only 5 were actually built. That number becomes 6 if you include the Booth family's permanent residence. 4 of the 5 basic houses have the same building permit date, October 28, 1915. The houses are based on the same conceptual model as the 1907 Ladies' Home Journal fireproof house for $5,000, with a central cube and an open porch. All of these homes were built for sale. None was ever planned as a rental, and the subdivision was never intended to be an exercise in the design of affordable housing by Wright. Booth advertised first the lots and then the homes weekly in the Chicago Tribune for more than 2 years. Economic uncertainty and the American entry into World War I may have limited the ability of individuals to purchase them. Approaching from the south, the first house we come to is popularly known as the Daniel and Lute Kissam House. Although the Kissams were long-term owners of the home, they were not its first purchasers. The house, which was completed by the fall of 1916, remained on the market until it was bought 2 years later, in 1918, by Herbert Angster, Sherman Booth's brother-in-law. It is unlikely the Angsters ever lived here because they already owned a Frank Lloyd Wright designed home in Lake Bluff. Daniel Kissam and his wife Lute bought the house in 1922 and remained there for the next 26 years. Lute Kissam was an avid gardener. The inside of the house is structured on a typical Wright plan, featuring a large living room that is open to the dining room and a kitchen, all anchored by a central living room hearth. 4 original sconces, a functional brick fireplace, original oak floors and trim, and numerous casement windows highlight the interior. Immediately to the north is the house commonly known as the Ross House. This house, first purchased by banker Frank Finch in July of 1916, resembles the design of the other Ravine Bluffs homes. In 1921, Finch sold the residence to William Ross and his wife Dorothy. Ross was a highway commissioner and contractor. The current owners of the home embarked on an ambitious restoration program in 2011. They implemented a strategy of restoring the original interior features where possible and updating the house to contemporary standards. They restored the woodwork and plaster finishes and original light fixtures. But they did extensive kitchen and bathroom renovation designed to create a more open floor plan that complemented the original design. The restored home is distinctive for its energy-efficient features. The new owners added extensive wall insulation, interior insulating glass windows, geothermal HVAC, a gray water recycling system, and energy-efficient insulating window curtains, among many other things. Immediately to the north of the Ross House is a third Wright design home popularly referred to as the Keir House. The building permit for this home showed a building cost not to exceed $7,500, almost double the $3,500 cost of the average home in 1915. A review of Glencoe building permits from that year shows that the Wright design homes fell into the upper end of permits, which ranged from $2,500 to $10,000. The first owner of this home was Herbert C. Angster, whose wife Blanche was a sister of Sherman Booth. Angster purchased the house in May of 1918, most likely because Booth was having trouble selling it. Angster sold the home to William Keir in August of 1919. Keir was the president of Keir Letter Company, a printer of advertisements. He was also president of the Chicago chapter of the Rotary Club from 1919 to 1920. The home is 51 feet wide by 36 feet deep, with a footprint of 1,836 square feet. The design is similar to the Kissam house, but is rotated 90 degrees. The living and dining room are at the rear of the house. The porte cochere is not original. It was added in 1921 when the garage was built. Moving across the street, we find the Root House. Of the 5 original Ravine Bluffs homes built in 1915, this house stayed vacant the longest. There is evidence that it was first rented by S.J. Gilfillan in 1920. This photo of one of the Gilfillan children in the yard of the home clearly shows the Kissam house across the street. Sherman Booth finally sold the home to advertising executive Hollis Reed Root in 1921, together with lots on either side. The garage was added in 1923. The south porch is shown as open in the original design, similar to the sleeping porches that existed in many of the Ravine Bluffs homes. That porch is now enclosed. The exterior patio and landscaping are contemporary. The window art glass is also a contemporary addition, not original to the home. To reach the fifth Wright-designed home, we travel north on Meadow and make a left turn onto Sylvan Road. The Perry House is located on the south side of a cul-de-sac at the end of the block. This home was originally purchased by Chesley Perry on March 2, 1918, although the house had been completed 2 years earlier in 1916. It was only the second of the 5 basic Ravine Bluffs houses to be sold. The purchaser of this home was also a Booth relative. Perry was married to Jessie Booth, another one of Sherman Booth's sisters. The home, renovated several years ago by its current owner, is wood-trimmed with overhanging eaves and a porte-cochere on the western side. All 5 Ravine Bluffs homes have the same basic structure, but are placed differently on the lots and feature different roof lines. This house and the Root House feature an identical plan except for the flat roof and the entry design. The hidden entry on the west side of the Perry House was common in Wright designs. The porch has been restored to its original open condition and has an interesting window mullion. Each of the Ravine Bluffs homes has a different window pattern. Next to the Perry House is the second and westernmost marker in Ravine Bluffs. It is the mirror image of the first marker on Meadow Road. It was intended to be the entry to a private train station for the North Shore Electric Line. The private station, shown in a drawing here, had a similar marker, but was never built. The Booth's young daughter had some fun with this marker shortly after it was built. In this photo, you can see the outline of the Perry House in the background. Moving east out of the cul-de-sac, we reach the intersection of Meadow Road and a northern branch of Sylvan Road. By taking a left turn here, we approach the final home that Wright designed for the Booth family. In April of 1916, as the first 5 Ravine Bluffs homes were completed, the Booths began to build their home on a large lot north of Sylvan Road. This is the house that became the Booth family's permanent residence for more than 40 years. It was the last of Wright's projects in Glencoe. Although it was significantly smaller and scaled back from Wright's original estate design, it included some same design features, such as an open roof terrace, a combination of flat and gabled roofs, and a ladder motif on the window designs. The building permit for the house was issued on April 14, 1916, at a cost not to exceed $16,000. Remember, the cost of the average U.S. home at the time was $3,500. The floor plan shows how the previously existing garage, shown here in green, was converted into an eastern bedroom wing, while the stables built with the garage in 1913, shown here in pink, were converted into a southern wing containing the dining room and the kitchen. The connecting 3-story tower contained the living room and porch on the first level, with additional bedrooms and an outdoor terrace on the upper levels. The public rooms were done on a grand scale, with the living room measuring 36 feet in length. Wright's designs included custom furniture, a dining room set, a library table, desks, beds, wastepaper baskets, floor lamps, and light sconces. Today, 4 of the living room chairs are in the Chicago History Museum. The dining room table is in the Rhode Island Design Museum, and the library table is in a private collection. Leaving the Booth house, we move south back to the intersection of Sylvan and Meadow Roads, and we turn left to find the Sylvan Road Bridge. Construction of the original bridge was approved by the Glencoe Village Council on March 30, 1915. The bridge was paid for by Sherman Booth personally. It is one of 2 freestanding bridges designed by Wright that were actually built, and is the only Wright-designed bridge that supports vehicular traffic. The reinforced concrete bridge includes a built-in cantilevered bench, street lights, and 6-foot-wide square planters supported on 8-inch diameter bases. The bridge started to deteriorate quickly after it was built. The first problems were noted in 1922 and required replacement of the sidewalk in 1929. By 1977, the bridge had deteriorated to the point that it was closed. In 1985, the original bridge was removed and rebuilt at a cost of more than $328,000, raised through a citizen-led effort that was supplemented by village funding. The bridge was listed on the National Trust for Historic Preservation prior to renovation and remains on the list even though the original structure has been replaced. Moving further east down Sylvan Road, we find the final marker delineating the boundaries of Ravine Bluffs. Interestingly, the original location of the Booth Cottage was not far from this marker. The cottage, designed as temporary housing for the Booth family while their magnificent estate was constructed, ended up being home for Sherman, Elizabeth, their 2 boys, and a nanny for 3 years. When their scaled-down home was finally finished in 1916, the Booths sold the cottage, and it was moved down the street to 239 Franklin Road, where it remained for more than 100 years. When the cottage was sold in May 2019 to a developer who applied to demolish it, the Glencoe Historical Society worked with numerous partners to save the structure. On July 21, 2020, the cottage was moved again, a little further down Franklin Road to the park, now known as Ravine Bluffs Park, where it is being restored for use as a museum and research facility. In the end, as Wright's first built neighborhood, Ravine Bluffs featured well-designed, modern homes that were marketed to 1915-era buyers seeking quality, uniqueness, comfort, and exclusivity. It is a shame that there were few takers. Sherman Booth ended up being a man in the wrong place at the wrong time. When the United States joined World War I in April of 1917, 4 Ravine Bluffs residences were still unsold. Family members bailed Booth out by purchasing 3. The remaining spec house was rented until it was finally sold on September 1, 1921, almost 6 years after Wright and Booth began to build a new high-class neighborhood on the Gold Coast of Glencoe, Illinois, a place they considered the most desirable residence town on the North Shore. More than 100 years later, those of us who live here believe it still retains that title. Thank you for taking this brief tour through Ravine Bluffs. I hope you enjoyed it and come back and visit us in person very soon.